today we have one of the all-time greats in the industry. Adam King started this business back in 2011, had no clue what this business is about. Okay, had no understanding of Medicare, no understanding of insurance, didn't even have an insurance license. And he's built one of the top insurance organizations in America. He manages over 40 recruiters himself, has recruited thousands of agents across the country. And today he's going to share with you guys his secret sauce on how to do it. And when I talk to Adam, we've talked 3 or 4 times on the phone, I'm like, he's just a regular guy, but he's going to work. And he's following a system, a program on recruiting. And I'm going to tell you, he's totally knocked it out the park. You guys are going to love this session. We did a great walkthrough yesterday. I mean, I took several pages of notes yesterday on. I'm looking forward to taking more today. Please get your pens out, get your papers out. Please have no distractions. Focus and hone in on what Adam's going to share with you guys today, because it's going to be off the chart. Adam, are you there? Adam King?
I am absolutely here, Tony. Thank you very much. I still feel like the final countdown's playing in my head right now.
And I'm glad to have you here today, man. We're so excited to have you. Adam, why don't you go ahead and kick it off for us?
Yeah, I would be absolutely happy to. So, gang, as Tony said, and I appreciate everybody being on here. My name is Adam King. So, right now I'm a director of Medicare for one of the integrity partnerships here. And so, as Tony said, I've been in the industry for 11 years. I absolutely had no idea that this was even something that somebody could do for a living back when I started. But once I found out what it was and what my role was going to be, or what I could make my role ultimately, man, I dove in head first, because from an opportunity standpoint, you only get so many of them across just at least your professional course. And this just felt like one that I couldn't say no to. And so, man, hopefully that guy's okay. So yeah, I jumped right in, and I've been recruiting and building agents into small agencies, and small agencies into large national players over the course of a decade plus. And it's something that we just do really well. It's kind of how we've carved out part of our niche in the market. And so I want to give you guys a little bit closer than a 10,000-foot view of some agent recruitment best strategies, but to really give you all some insight on how we've gotten to where we were, because when I started back in 2011, we had 30 odd employees, and now we're at over 150, and it's all just part of that maturation process and growth as we got better and better at recruiting and building out distribution and downline, and just strategizing with agents just like yourselves in all states, in all small communities, large metro areas. It doesn't matter, because, man, the one lovely thing about this industry is there are opportunities everywhere. And yeah, let's just kind of dive right in, so I can give you all some of my perspective, and then towards the end we'll have some time for questions. But certainly, Tony and Mike, anything you guys want to interject in the meantime, please feel free to jump in. So yeah, agent recruitment best strategies. When you look at the agenda, we're going to start with just kind of the why. It's important for you all to understand why you would want to look at your career trajectory from this moment, and to figure out why recruiting is such a huge step and an important one. We're going to talk about the solutions that you provide as somebody who is in the recruiting space, because that's how you're going to get the most traction on any conversation or any relationship that you spawn or manifest. You've got to be able to provide solutions, and you have to be able to explain that. We're going to talk about some effective methods, and Tony talked about how hard you guys work, how you work. You've got the feet on the streets. You're in these communities and things. I mean, you already understand the work ethic that it takes. This is just a different perspective. It's not even a huge course correction, just a small course change to add in another layer of what you're doing professionally. And so we'll go through some of those, and then just some general takeaways for things that, can hopefully encapsulate what we're going to talk about here over the next 30, 45 minutes, give or take. So let's jump forward to the next slide. And before we get started here, it's important. It's more than just important. Like, it is the defining reason on why you all are in a position with a company that there's really no match for in the space. So we're all part of Integrity Marketing Group, and you've got some names there on the left, which I'll talk about in a second, and I'll go over some other of the bona fides or bona fides, however you prefer to say it, so you can get a perspective of these are all things that it help answer the what's in it for me from your perspective, from people that you can run into who you were trying to recruit later on down the road, and then so you can see what the runway looks like, and what the future looks like for what's considered an omni-channel insurtech company. That's a lot of big words, but it's certainly what the future is for what Integrity is doing and what's going to be available for you guys. So when you see the name Brian Adams, he is the CEO of Integrity. When you think about recruiting and building something out that may sound like a small business idea that you're doing out of your home, that's exactly how he started Integrity Marketing Group, out of his home. Now, he has been in the industry for a long time. I used to work for a company called Legacy Safeguard, which I remember even from back when I first started. But just through developing relationships and understanding the markets, he's been able to come up with a plan that's just been beyond attractive to not just agencies, but investors across the country. And you see the name Steve Young there. That is the Steve Young, if you're a sports fan, that you are thinking of, number 8 Hall of Famer from the San Francisco 49ers. He is the chairman of the board of Integrity. And so he's not just part of Integrity because of a name and they wanted to be able to use that as a marketable resource. It is fantastic to have somebody who most people know, especially in the demographic for where insurance is right now. But this guy he's far more successful as a businessman than he was as a quarterback, and the guy's in the Hall of Fame. So obviously that tells you, at least from my perspective, how infused he is with what Integrity does and these investment companies that he works with, to make sure that there's just a lot of financial opportunity for our partners and what we're looking to do in the future. Some of the numbers there, I mean, they kind of speak for themselves, but there's almost 500,000 agents that are affiliated with the Integrity Marketing brand through all of the business units underneath. Over 10 million annual clients, over 7 billion in sales for 21, and that's going to multiply by not like a decimal point, but by full numbers as we continue to move forward. When you think about being in the space and where you want to be aligned in the Medicare or really in any insurance space, obviously my specialty is the Medicare space, but if you think of like a race or a marathon or something, right? There's always somebody who's in first place, and there could be people who are closely in second and third. And what you want to do is you want to break the band. And what break the band means is you want to get so far ahead that you don't feel connected to whoever's in second or third place. And once you've broken the band, now what second place does is they start looking at third place to see how far away they are from that person. Well, Integrity has done just that from just a growth and investment strategy in this space. Like there really is no second. It's so far away that it's easy to talk about the strengths of what we have, because if you just look at the numbers and what has been amassed over the course of the last, I don't know, I would say 5 years, it really is impressive. So what that does is it helps you guys understand that there's going to be a lot of exclusive opportunities, whether it be from a carrier opportunity, from an exclusive product opportunity that we can have. It's certainly well past just the Medicare space and what Integrity does. It's getting into certainly Medicare or ancillary products. There's a lot of wealth and financial investment things. So what that does is it just helps expand what our footprint is and the people that we can help, and then ultimately the resources that come back so we can continue to build the technologies that are at the forefront for what agents need. And there's just a ton of opportunity built inside of that. And so one thing that happened here at the end of last year, there's a company called Silver Lake Investments that invested $1.2 billion as a minority shareholder inside of Integrity. Again, $1.2 billion, which is a huge number. That particular group, they are an investment company, which is, I believe, the 5th highest valued in the world. And so just names that you all may have heard of, they've helped grow companies like Airbnb, Twitter, GoodRx, Dell Technologies. There's a bunch of them that they've helped. So while you don't know the name of Silver Lake, Silver Lake certainly has a very successful history and place here in terms of investing in companies that they see are working the right way. Like when the particular business unit that I'm with, we were affiliated with Integrity, I think there were 30 business units or managing partners inside of it. There are now 181. And again, these numbers are things that you all can latch onto when you look at how you're growing your business, or certainly you're looking at recruiting people. Like, when you just kind of unload this onslaught of facts, it's very difficult for anybody else to say, well, hey, but how about here? Because again, it goes back to my point. The band has been broken. There is no second best. There's just other options. So if you want to work with the best, and you certainly want to be able to have that in your arsenal for how you can pitch and understand your value proposition, understanding integrity and what they're all about is key, because ultimately you don't really hustle product when you're recruiting. You're talking about opportunity, and you're talking about just building out strategies, and certainly growing distribution and expanding footprints. And so these are the things, at least from my perspective, that resonate really well when I'm talking with successful agents or successful agencies. And so, yeah, I mean, take as many notes, or get on the Integrity's website and just read around for what they do, because they do have a really strong set of values. And yeah, like, there is a genuine concern about the people we work with. They do a lot for people inside of Integrity, and there's just a huge trickle down effect for the agents that work with us. So I don't want to make this just a huge commercial on Integrity, but it's super important to me. It's something I'm very passionate about. I know Tony is as well. And the more you all hear that message and understand just the scope and the size and the scale of what Integrity is, it really becomes kind of awe-inspiring. So that's just a little bit of the Integrity pitch. And yeah, we can go ahead and jump onto the next slide when you're ready. So why recruit? You see here we've got a few bullet points. I mean, one is to take your business to the next level. You simply can't clone yourself. So as far as bringing on talent that you would see as like a 1-to-1 ratio for you, that's not an option, right? And so at some point in time, you get capped with what you write. If you're an individual agent, you can only handle so many in your book of business before just the organization / sales of what you're doing. Like, there's just no more space, right? Your bandwidth is capped. And so in order to turn into a larger presence, if that is a goal that you have, you got to start looking at recruiting and building out a downline. There are a ton of advantages to it. You know, you're changing your brand and where you're at in the space, where whatever your professional career goals were, you've just, pointed that direction up, as opposed to just kind of a lateral move. It certainly gives you an endless space to be able to, just do more from what you can learn and earn out of this space. And it helps you grow. It helps you grow other people professionally, and give people insight into opportunities that they may not have thought of, because not everybody is like this a massive entrepreneur like Tony at heart who thinks about it. They have to be mentored or pushed into these positions. And man, when you run into A players or B players who have a lot of drive, one, you don't have to worry about what they're doing, because they kind of have that in their DNA. But man, when you can get them pointed in the right direction, and these are the people that you can build your brand and your culture around, it helps both yourself and what you're trying to do, and certainly it helps other people, just become better at what they do. Which there's an intrinsic value to that, which is difficult to put kind of a number or a reason on, other than, hey, you simply got to be here to do more than just help yourself out. Otherwise, from my perspective, it becomes a little stale. Increasing your brand, certainly you may have a strong name in the space, but if you've got agents underneath you that, again, are bought into your vision, that you have a proposition that works, from making it easy for them to make that decision, then they start also relaying that message. And that's how you build a brand. It takes time, right? It doesn't happen overnight. But when you're dealing with the Amazons of the world, like what Integrity is, whatever other distributor is out there, it's not quite as impressive of a name. And inside the space, that's really what we're all affiliated with. And certainly people get into this industry because, of course, we want to help. There's a lot of stories on, you either have somebody in your family or your friend circle that has gone through a situation where you can help, or you've identified some ways that you can do more to give back. But it certainly doesn't hurt that this industry pays and it rewards handsomely. And even of all these super successful individual agents I know, if like financial security and ultimately a form of the word wealth is of interest to you, it's certainly something you're going to have a better opportunity in doing if you really want to dig in and start thinking about building a downline out, because the compound interest of renewals, you see how fantastic that is. When there's administrative fees, which are other ways that you can build out a version of passive income, when you've got downline agents selling with you and in conjunction with you over the course of years, gosh, that stuff adds up quick. And it helps people get to places they just didn't really expect, and certainly it helps elevate whatever goals you may have to a new level. And that stuff, especially depending on what your background is, and where I'm from, where people are from around here, opportunities don't exist left and right. So when you find one and you dig into it, you do not forget what's out there. So recruiting has a lot of intrinsic value. It has a lot of professional growth value, and certainly it gives and it gives back. So these are just some of the reasons that, again, from my perspective, where I work nationally in all 50 states, this is a key to taking things to that next level. So we can jump forward to a before you begin slide. And so when I talked about integrity, that's part of what a value proposition is. And so your value proposition is really the things that you're going to offer to an agent that help answer the question, well, why you? Like, why should I work with you, right? And man, like, you guys already have a killer value proposition through what Tony's built at Global Premier. And so when you think about having all of those opportunities, whether it be with like your exclusive contracting opportunities, there's incredible lead programs that you guys have. There's recruitment, incentives for that, and that stuff does not exist in other places. It just simply does not. I work with agencies literally in all 50 states. There are things that are unique to what you guys have that, again, you can't find elsewhere. And so these are all parts of your value proposition. And then you add that to what Integrity's overall model is and what that's going to keep bringing in over the course of years. It becomes very important, and certainly very much of interest to people. So it helps you guys build out what, again, your offer is going to be, to say, here's why you want to give me 5 minutes to let you know what I do and what we do, and where you might be able to make a career decision to come work for a place that can certainly help you out. It helps you share your values and your goals and your attitude, and you can start pairing up with people. Again, you don't want clones of yourself everywhere, because you get a little tunnel vision and you lose perspective of just other ways to do things. But there's certain attitudes and behaviors that will help build a team and certainly build it in a more positive direction. And these are things that you can look for. These are things that you want to talk about, because this is what employees, even if they're contracted, if they're not like a W-2, like, these are the things that people are interested in, even if it doesn't get brought up in an interview. Ultimately, those are the types of things that can drive people away over the course of time, because you're not speaking the same language as far as like what they're passionate about or what they ultimately care about. And that's why you need to find out the why of anybody you're working with, to see if it's in alignment with what your goals are. And then when you talk about telling the story of how you got to where you are, and you start thinking about all the people that either helped you, and certainly all the individual work you put in with yourself, being able to explain to people what that runway looks like, what the framework looks like, almost like a flow chart on how you got to where you're going. It becomes very impactful when that's how you're starting the conversation. Not saying, hey, I'm going to help you make this much money. It's, hey, I'm going to speak to you more on this human level, where you've got some dreams and some goals that are very similar to myself, and here's how I did it. And like Tony said, I mean, I am just like everybody else. I just happened to see an opportunity. I wanted to dig my heels in and plant some roots and go for it. And so, like, it doesn't take, a 1 in a billion type of personality to do this. It just takes, kind of that drive, that attitude, and the effort to get to it. So understanding your all's value proposition, if you don't know how to pitch it, it's something that can be a little difficult if you're not used to it. So certainly practice that stuff. Write it down. Think about the almost unlimited options that you could say, man, here's exactly why you want to work with me, because that can be a very difficult question to answer on the fly if you're trying to negotiate with somebody and you don't know what your portfolio looks like. It's like selling and not knowing all the carriers you have, and so you're at a distinct disadvantage with somebody who knows what they can offer more than you. So it's highly important to understand that, and certainly, I mean, talking with people like Michael and Tony and folks who've worked in these industries and have done this for a while, lean on others. Like one of the things I try to teach is, borrow somebody else's experience until you learn it. It makes it a lot easier to transition and segue into other conversations. And certainly it just gets better over time. It's like practice, like anything else. It is absolutely something that is tried and true. It's important to do this. So we can move on to the next one. We're going to talk about how to find agents. So the previous stuff is, again, you're providing solutions. That's why consumers make decisions, and consumers in this particular respect are going to be, agents you're trying to recruit. And so if you can show them all those solutions you can provide from a financial, technological end, from a cultural end, from just a knowledge and training end, that's what they're going to be interested in. But now you need to know how to find them, right? And so recruiting agents, just like being a successful salesperson, is 100% a grind. There are a ton of ways you can do it, and there are super cost-effective ways. There are certainly ways where you can invest money in that can be a little more automated, which could potentially return better results. But again, it's all dependent on what your overall marketing budget is. And regardless of anything else, no successful agent has gotten there without himself or herself just being a really hard worker. And it's the same thing from a distributor standpoint or an insurance carrier standpoint. This stuff does not happen overnight, and it doesn't happen because you want it to. It happens because you put the effort into it. And so as we talk about some of these methods for ways you all can find agents, just understand that it does take, you have to commit to it, because I see what happens when it's not done at a full scale, and you have to figure out that way to balance what your day looks like as a salesperson and a recruiter. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. And so the first one that we're going to talk about here is call lists. So if we jump forward, I'm going to take a drink real quick. So call lists are certainly something that is very dear to me, as a kind of a virtual entity where we do a ton of recruiting calls. It's something that it's just important, like touch points. Are again another way you can brand yourself. This is the most cost-effective way to market what you're doing, but it is one where you've got to turn it into a competitive game, right? So most salespeople are competitive, which is great, and when you start gamifying what you're doing, it makes it a little easier to go through the grind of what the routine is. But again, there's no career where you don't have a grind. Professional athletes grind, 1 or 2 times a day just in the gym. So it's not like they just go out there and they're awesome on the field. And certainly all those other kind of glamorous roles, there's a ton of grind behind the scenes that you just have to understand that's part of the process. But you guys have the ability to get call lists through your relationship with Global. So all you have to do is ask for it, right? And so in a call list, you would want to identify the markets you want to call. Maybe it's just in your current neighborhood, maybe it's in the county, maybe it's surrounding counties, or it doesn't really matter because you understand the products at least in your resident state. And then you need to expand your knowledge elsewhere so that you can call in all 50 states. Because the one nice thing is the way they have their setup, because I was talking to Tony about it, these things are all scrubbed against the do not call list. These are going to be identified people in the space. It's not like picking up a phone book and just calling the white pages or the yellow pages, hoping to land to the right person. These are people who are intentionally doing what you do for a living. And the one nice thing about being in this industry is still using the phone is something that that folks do. As you all see, like using a phone, any sort of phone, is kind of like an antique way to do things. But where we work in an industry where there's so much real-time information that comes out, and there's just so many people that we work with, at least it gives a chance to be able to make touch points with folks. And so you just have to ask for one of these call lists. And whenever we generate call lists, you got to call people. I mean, when we get a lead, we'd say, you want to do 3 and 10. But if you've got somebody it's that you're trying to, like, you just have a huge list of agents, what you have to ultimately do is identify who you're talking with, right? And so we'll just use a list of 100 for the sake of argument. So you call through your list of 100. say 50 of them you just ultimately never make contact with, and that is what it is. But 50 of them you've been able to get on the phone and diagnose what they do for a living. So you want to rank them. And you want to rank them because, again, it's like if you're an individual agent, you can still only work with so many people before there's so many requests, you're stretched too thin, and then you can't provide the services that you need to. And so people will ultimately find a place where they can have more attention and they can feel like it's a better professional decision for them. You can't blame them for that. You just want to mitigate things so that you don't have to. And that's why recruiting helps offset a lot of this workload, because you don't have to take the responsibilities of doing everything yourself, because it's just not possible. So getting these call lists is super important, and we're going to go through a couple scripts just so you can see like what it looks like. You want a voicemail to be under 20 seconds, certainly. I believe you got 4 seconds to make an impression when you get somebody on the phone. So you've got to be, you have to be succinct, and everything has to be done with from like a critical nature, because again, like people's time is expensive, and trying to get somebody to disrupt their way of being or their course of life, that is not the easiest thing. I mean, you guys, I'm sure, get contacted by people all the time trying to convince you of, the next best thing. So understand that that's going to be scalable to what you do, and you just want to make sure that you're in the best position to do so. So let's look at a couple example scripts on this next slide. And so again, your job is going to be leaving quality voicemails. It does take multiple touch points. This is not a training on how to leave voicemails, because goodness knows, depending on the product or the time or how many calls that you've made, these things change. So I guess overall, my point would be, don't leave the same voicemail every time. Have yourself 3 or 4 kind of go-tos that you have scripted out until you just know it by memory. Change it up so that the person on the other end of the phone doesn't say, man, this guy, this girl is leaving the exact same voicemail, and I can tell that they're bored with it. Because I can guarantee you, if they can tell you're bored with it, nobody will call you back. Unless it's like the right place, right time, lightning in a bottle. You're just going to spin your wheels and you're going to get discouraged. So think about the importance of that as you make your calls, because you want to focus on tone, you want to focus on the speed of which you talk, and certainly, like I said a minute ago, like the inflection of your voice. If you sound interested and interesting, that is very important. And as somebody who's built a large team, I've had to go through those growing pains of being able to identify, man, like this person's super bright and they're really going after it, but they don't have that, je ne sais quoi on a voicemail that makes me feel like anybody's going to give a rip to call them back. So think about how you sound to somebody else. Heck, leave yourself a voicemail. And most people think it's kind of cringeworthy to hear themselves, but don't judge yourself from just how your voice sounds. Judge yourself from how you're delivering the message, and just continue to practice that, and you'll get better over time. There's no reason to read these examples. You guys can read this stuff, and there can be more. Like if you want to see other options for this, just ask Tony and Michael, and certainly we can help provide just some different ways so you all can see some of the avenues on how you leave these voicemails. But think about it from a call standpoint. If you're selling and your day is booked, and I don't mean, oh man, I've got a sale, I've got one appointment today, my day's booked. That's not a booked day. That's just a day with a booking. You want to scale in your calls to that. So for example, when we first start people as marketers, they're making 100 calls a day, right? But for our experienced marketers who've grown a huge book of business, they're expected to make 20 outbound calls a day, because as soon as you grab an agent and you've recruited an agent to be part of your downline, well, that's great, but now you have to backfill so you can keep growing. Otherwise, again, you're going to run into the same scenario where you're capped. And so it's a never-ending chase, which is fun because you're not going to stare at the clock, but just understanding what the effort to put into it from a number standpoint, so you can start analyzing your day. It certainly helps a ton. Next is email blasts. So this is another fairly cost-effective way to market yourself and certainly brand yourself. Phone calls are returned at a higher rate than emails, just because you all see how many e-blasts you're getting from every place you've signed up for over the past decade of your life. So when you think about it that way, you want to look at one of these vendors, and I listed the ones on the right because it gives you a little bit of what, like, hey, it's free in the beginning, or it's free for so many months, or you get this much volume a day. You can't e-blast from Gmail or Yahoo. Once you do that, they flag it because that's not what they designed their email for. So you can send out onesie twosies, but make sure you Google the rules of how many emails you can send out from just kind of an individual's email address. And so you want to start looking into brands out there that offer like a user-friendly interface. Certainly, you see some of these key features, whether it's security and reliability, tracking, list management, design, so on and so forth. These are things you want to do. I would encourage you guys to go to either, Elastic Email, Mailgun, or Sendinblue. Sendinblue is, I've got a screen capture just on the next page to give you all an idea of what it looks like for when you're kind of designing an email. So we can jump forward to that one. It helps show you some of the specifics behind Sendinblue. And like, I know they have SMS marketing, which is text marketing. There's a chat feature. They do have a CRM built into it. There are ways to automate your emails. So Mike, if we could jump forward to the next blast email. There we go. So that's just what the screen looks like if you're starting to design an email. And again, this isn't a technical tutorial on how to use this, but you just click on the part of the email you want to edit. It's very simple. It's user-friendly. It's right in front of you. And once you've composed it completely, you can then get like a snapshot template of how this thing looks like before it goes out. And so then it's a matter of just figuring out how to market and brand and what the timeliness is of emails. There are plenty of trainings that can be done on that. It's a great complement to what you're doing if you're making calls. I mean, something I look at is I'm going to make a call. I'm going to send some sort of actionable email after the fact because it's important to give just multiple touch points at the same moment as opposed to spacing it out in the course of days, because emails get buried quick. Voicemails simply just don't get listened to. And then if you want to, there's text features. I wouldn't suggest anything automated from a text feature, because if somebody opts out of that, that means they're going to be on like a do not call forever. But if you know somebody's in the space and you're chasing them down, man, do not worry about giving them their cell phone number. People aren't looking to abuse it, but if you have a closer connection and they feel like they can have access to somebody who can help them in the space, it does go a long way. So we can jump to the direct mail and social media page. So these next couple pages here are examples of direct mail flyers or social media blasts that people use either on Facebook, on LinkedIn. There's obviously a lot of social media out there. These are the two that would get the most activity. Certainly Facebook leads the way, especially for the demographic from a client standpoint, but from an agent standpoint as well. It kind of fits the mold. Instagram is another one that's great to at least get familiar with. Direct mail costs, if you send out 1,000-piece mailer, it's going to cost $500, right? And so that is expensive. Your expected return rate is probably something like 1.5%. And so you're looking at, a small number. You're looking at 15 leads that are going to come back if you send out a direct mail piece. So it can be a little bit of a daunting ask if you're looking at taking this money directly out of your pocket. But look at what the recruiting co-op you have through Global is. Like, you've already got it available to you if you bring on one person who's getting onboarded into the system. So think about that. You could even split that with whoever you're recruiting and say, listen, if we come on board, we're each going to get a 1,000-piece mailer. And then you can start to grow both client and agent downlines. That's just one way of using it. There's obviously other ways to get co-op. There's certainly a lot of leads and things through your relationship with Global. So just as kind of some ideas, the carrier or the vendors on the left, Lead Concepts, MS Power Mail, ARM Leads, these are all vendors that we use and we've had success with over the course of years and years. So if you're not familiar with that, it's just another way to get trained on how to, you can really pinpoint who you're sending these things to. You've given them their demographics, where you want to send it, so you're not using a shotgun approach. You can get very acute into the people you're trying to market to. And then of course you can leave these things at like any PNC shop, any place that you could think there could be a referral base. There's a lot of ways to connect with people that don't have to be in the Medicare space, even if they're not going to be an immediate downline. Obviously you all know there's a lot of ways to just generate some other courses of action and just to continue building your brand out. I'd like to jump forward to the next slide, as it's just some additional examples to give you an idea of, you don't have to be a graphic design maestro to send stuff out. You can certainly use whoever you're partnered with to help out with things. It's about just getting the momentum going, right? Especially if you're not used to recruiting, if you're used to selling, you want to just get something out there. It doesn't have to be perfect. Don't get stuck in perfection. All perfection, being a perfectionist does, from at least my vantage point, because it's something I battled with forever. Man, it just makes you procrastinate, because I was like, I can't do it till it's perfect. I can't do it till it's perfect. I don't want it to look like garbage, but at the same time, if it's ready to go, think of what you're doing here is trying to get into the recruiting side. Is you're on an airplane, it's going down the runway, that plane is going to take off. So the main things are, you need to have wheels, you need to have wings, and you need to have an engine. You don't have to be sitting on the most comfortable seat when it takes off. You just need to start and realize this stuff will pick up over time, because again, no one's an overnight success when it comes to recruiting. It can take a long time, and just depending on the angles that you create and the niches that you create, it can shorten some of that growth. But again, these give just some ideas on what things look like that are easy to put onto Facebook, that work both from a mobile or from a web-based perspective, or if you're on a tablet. And then there's certainly things that are a little more eye-catching and elaborate if you want to e-blast those, or like we talked about, send direct mail pieces out. On the next slide, it talks about agents are everywhere. It's 100% true. Like, if I look at the team I've built, I would say at least a third of the team are from referrals. So who do you know? Who do you trust? Who do your friends know? Who can you vet out that at least it's not a complete stranger that you're thinking of? Again, there's still tried and true practices that you can do from a question asking standpoint or a testing standpoint to see if it's somebody who fits what you're trying to do. But man, do not discount the effectiveness of referrals. You certainly don't from a selling standpoint, and from a recruiting standpoint. Man, it definitely helps out. Salespeople are in every industry. Wherever I'm walking around to, I've got just cards in my pocket that are not talking about working for me, but they're just talking about working with integrity. What the opportunity is from a career and financial standpoint, it's just a number and a web link that sends them to where they can say, okay, I want to put in my resume. Like, you all could have something simple like that with your email address, whatever your social media page is, just something to say, hey, listen, if you're interested, take a look at it. There's a lot of opportunity here. Let's talk in detail. Because whether you're at a restaurant or just any retail store, or man, if you just run into somebody and they have a particular vibe, don't discount the power of a gut instinct. If it feels like this could at least be somebody I want to pursue, it feels like they've kind of got that energy I'm looking for. Yeah, at least have a conversation with them, because that's not going to hurt. And again, if you're positioning your value proposition like we talked about earlier, man, things are going to be great. So think about job fairs, conferences. Obviously, there's tons of carrier events. You don't want to be that guy or that girl who goes to a carrier event. They're like, oh man, they're just here to recruit agents. But they're still networking events. And so I wouldn't go around just putting my business card in front of everybody, because that's a good way to just get some bad reputations, and you're trying to build your reputation in a positive way. But think about, just getting out there and putting yourself out, from not a client recruiter to building your own book, but just how you can start to talk with people about having bigger dreams. Because man, a lot of people want to do stuff like this, they just don't know where to start. And so if you're starting and you can give them some insight to it, it just helps. It helps a ton. We got a couple slides left here. The next is what it takes. So writing versus recruiting. When you think about what you all are accustomed to do, I mean, you all are top sales professionals because you got great listening skills, you're motivated, you can handle rejection, you know how to communicate. The one great thing is all of those translate to recruiting, right? And so you got to make sure you're organized. You're going to continue to sell, but you can only sell so much again until you're capped out. So you want to start duplicating those efforts, bringing on agents so you can continue to train them. And then again, that word of mouth goes out, or at least they become like testimonials and examples of how you've helped build somebody up. If I'm thinking about like what you're doing during the day, if you're selling 50% of the day, I would still want to make 40 phone calls a day, right? Like I would say, like, push whatever number you think you could hit, just double it, because chances are you're probably just giving yourself a number that you're comfortable with. And so like if you use the 10x theory, it's like, oh man, if I'm supposed to get 10 calls a day, I'm gonna get 100 calls a day. And it's not like, oh, I'm legitimately going to get 100 calls a day. But if you're shooting for 100, I guarantee you're at least going to exceed your goal of 10. And so just think of ways where you can, again, gamify or modify what your direction, your positioning is, and that'll help, that'll help you reach out to more people. I can't stress enough that making those calls out to people in the industry, that is the easiest way to at least cut costs. It's the most cost-effective way. There's just no doubt about it. And I think it takes 8 to 12 calls just to get someone on the phone, right? So that shows you how urgent every call needs to be. It shows you how many touch points you need. And then when you get somebody on the phone, daggone, you have got to take that moment critically, because if it takes 8 to 12, well, it's going to take another 8 to 12. And then you have to resell your value prop again. And it's almost like starting over. I think in the span of 72 hours, people forget 95% of what you've told them if there's no relationship, right? So think about some of these numbers that can help you out if you take it as serious as you need to. Again, I would shoot for 100 and then scale it back. If you're super busy, cut that in half. But give yourself the best opportunity to have some success, and understand that conversations may be clunky at the front end, but it's just like shooting free throws. The more you do it, all of a sudden you just start sinking more of them. So again, I'm always going to lean more towards making phone calls, because that's the foundation of what we do. And boy, has it worked. And so again, when I think about like a cost per acquisition or what your individual revenue is, I want to try to make the smartest decisions possible so that I can increase my business. And man, I'm not stretching myself so thin that I've got to answer to somebody else on, why'd you spend $10,000 on leads when you got a mortgage to pay? So think about ways that you can save time and just do better from that standpoint. So again, what it takes effort and attitude. And I know we're getting close to the top of the hour. We've got one slide left, Michael. Jump. It's a takeaways slide here. So building a successful agency does not mean that you have to have a goal of being an integrity partner at all. There are successful agencies we work with that have 2 downline agents. There are successful agencies we work with that have thousands of downline agents, and it runs the gamut in between. So just because you may not be a national brand does not mean you are unsuccessful. It's all relative to what you all want. And man, you can make killer money with 15 strong downline, just as you can make killer money with 250 downline agents that just kind of get it done, but nobody's a killer. So it depends on if you're going to be a volume shop or if you want to take things from a little more quality standpoint. But again, it depends on how you're going to separate your time and how much training you're going to get involved, or if you're going to let your value prop kind of ride the wave and bring the people on and then get them to understand, hey, there's definitely no better place to be. I'm being taken care of. And certainly there's, like I said in the beginning, moving forward, there's so much opportunity with what your partnership through Global and Integrity are. I mean, it's definitely a no-brainer. When I talk with marketers, or if I talk with agents we work with, the scale is you're either a rising sun or a setting star. There's no lateral movement on that. So the nice thing is it can change daily, but if you put in a good day's work and you have accomplished things and your trajectory's up, that's great. If you feel like you've just kind of kicked tires and hem-hawed around, well, then absolutely that day you were a setting sun. You got to have more rising star days than setting sun days, and you certainly want to have them run in conjunction with one another, because that's just what it takes. And you have to be honest with yourself by saying, hey, is this the sort of effort that I put in? If I was legitimately judging myself, or if there was an impartial, other party, would they say that this day was a rising sun day? And so I would challenge everybody to make sure that you do what you can to make sure that you can say, yes, again, it was a rising star day. And that is what I challenge my team to do. And, after enough encouragement, and especially the positive roles you can play as a mentor, and of course with the value add, you can see a lot of trends that are super positive. Make sure you guys understand technology. It's at the forefront. Agents want all the coolest technological bells and whistles. If you do not have them, they will go somewhere that has it. Even if it's something that they may not utilize as much, I look at it as like SilverScript, or something like one of these plans is built into a an MA plan where, seniors will leave, they don't have it, but utilization is low. Don't worry about that. You got to make sure you're aligned with somewhere that has things that are going to be created, that are in existence, that are continuing to get developed. There is no better place than where you guys are right now, for everything that encompasses the industry that we're in. So the one nice thing about it is most of this stuff does not have to come out of your pocket. It's going to be offered by the alignments you're with, and letting anybody who's interested understand that. That speaks it speaks volumes. Use these tools provided by Global. If you don't know all of those value props like the back of your hand, I mean, shame on you. You guys should be using this to your advantage, and then certainly you should be using it to entice people to come work with you, because it's fun growing a team. Like I enjoy it. It's fun working for more than myself, and certainly it's good to give back and to keep smart people around, and then just to help the communities that you're involved in. And gang, the last thing is like, if you look at that last little bullet about relationship building and follow through, like this industry in general there's a huge percentage that is relationship building focused or centric. So if you're good at that, you have an advantage over a ton of people. But if you're also good at relationship building and the follow through that happens after you've promised or you've pitched these value propositions, if you can combine those two, I would say that you are ahead of 95% of people, because there's a lot of great pitch men and pitch women, but the follow through part, that's the organizational aspect that can be lost. So make sure you guys concentrate on being good at those things. And that's the stuff that agents are attracted to. It's the thing that they want to latch on to and feel like they can trust where they're at. And then just continue to be transparent from a business standpoint, and helping people out, and it will grow over time. Again, it doesn't happen overnight, but we've grown from 30 people when I started to 150 employees. We have just an endless amount of distribution from the very foundational things I've talked about here. Again, it's not rocket science. It's just understanding what you have to do and how to apply it. So I hope through that 40 or 50 or so minutes of just kind of going through it, helped at least open your eyes to a couple things. Tony and Mike, I don't know if you guys have any questions or anything you all want to bring up to it, but I appreciate getting the chance to talk about it, because this is something that's super important to me. So hopefully you all got the sense of that throughout this talk.
Tony, you're on mute. I think you're on your phone and on the app.
I see a couple. I see at least a question here from Ralph that says, when an agent agrees to come on board, they do so for their reason, not ours. How would you rank the average reason to join you? I would talk about it from, leads is the buzzword. Of course, you want to have some sort of lead generation or opportunity for it. So yes, you want to encapsulate that, but there is nobody out there that recruits who doesn't promise unlimited leads. So you take it all with a grain of salt. Back-end support is great. If you're talking about an individual agent, that won't be as big of a mover than if you're talking with an agency who simply doesn't have an administrative side. So they will understand that. Commissions, knowing your numbers, that is super important. Understanding things like co-op, understanding the relationships that you have that are built out inside of Integrity already. Most people don't understand the scale and the scope and how many touch points we are. I don't know if I said it earlier, but there were 30 managing partners when we got involved with Integrity. They're now 181. They are acquiring 2 agencies per week. Silver Lake, who, like I said, invested $1.2 billion, they weren't even on the growth path that Integrity's been on. So stuff is happening the right way internally here. And yeah, these are all things that you could lead with. And it's not like there's a cookie cutter approach. You got to find what you're best with and then position that. That's the best way to say it.
Great stuff.
Let's see here. There's not like a broken out recruitment video that we've done. Everything we do, it's all going to be live based. We try not to record it because, if like this is like an hour-long call, good luck getting somebody to pay attention for more than 5 minutes. So we've tried, but the utilization rate, it's best to catch these things live or talk with somebody in like a one-on-one standpoint, just so you can be a little more effective. Certainly, I'll take that note back because we're always looking for things people to be interested in. But gosh, if we do 20-minute videos, the amount of people that actually watch to the end, there's so many distractions on your phone. You just want to make sure you're, like I talked about earlier, being as critical as possible. Yeah, you're looking for an agency with back office is certainly one. Just if you talk to an agent and you ask them what their cost per acquisition is, and they look at you blindly, boy, you've got a great way to say, well, let's figure out what you're spending to get every enrollment, and then show them all the tools and the means that you have necessary so that you can start bringing that number down, because ultimately that's what's coming out of their pocket. And so, yeah, it's about increasing their revenue, but certainly figuring out what that cost per acquisition is and lowering it as much as possible to continue to multiply that stuff. All right, Tony, Mike, what, let's see here. It's true. Yeah, this is the thing about from Everett. Yeah, I mean, it is important. So if you all aren't reading the chats, make sure you look through, because there are some good points in there and certainly questions that, yeah, they can run the gamut. And if you guys, it was a lot of information. I tend to just kind of steamroll when I'm in a presentation, when I'm in go mode. It's a lot to absorb. If you have questions, just send them over to Michael, and he and I can communicate, and I can help answer anything that maybe he and Tony already have answers for. But from my perspective, if I can help, I'm always happy to do so. That's certainly why this partnership is so awesome, because, man, you've got help in every state in the country, and that there's not a lot of places that can say that.
Great job. Thank you, Adam. Mike, do you want to open up the mic if there's anyone who wants to ask a question outside of the chat real quick?
Absolutely. I think, let me just double check here. Yes, participants can unmute themselves. So if you guys, want to hop on the mic real quick, we'll give you a moment.
This is Joe from Philly. I have a question.
Fire, Joe.
Yes. Thanks a lot. I appreciate the presentation. I learned a lot. I wanted to ask about what do you think about, I've noticed that a lot of recruiting lists, like for instance, you might have a lot of captive agents on the call, and what they tend to do is give you their company email address. What's your how do you work when it comes to email address? Sometimes they give a personal, and sometimes they give a company. Do you think it's wise to send them an email blast to their company email address?
I mean, you can send one. Who knows who's looking at that? It'll be somebody in like the office administration standpoint. What can happen is when Global's generating lists, one thing we always do is anytime we pull a list, we'll filter it and look at just by email extensions, and anything that could be through bankers or something where it's it's a captive shop, we would carve those out and think about a different strategy for it. So the same thing, like if you're going through a list and you've got 20 phone numbers that are the same, you can have a pretty good understanding that it's probably a call center. So your pitch is not going to be as effective. So thinking about looking for more of those unique names and numbers and addresses, yeah, it's a great question, because you can spin some wheels if you're not paying attention to how many duplicates there are. But the best way is we try to carve that stuff out. And then if you want to make a play for a bigger group like that, I would just say go see them in person. That stuff is far more effective if you're trying to, talk to one of those decision makers. It's tough to get them on the phone, especially in the beginning.
Great question. Great answer. Thanks, Adam. Anyone else real quick before we move on? Because I do have a few more minutes after this session with Adam that I need to share with you guys. It's very important. It's going to be about what's going to happen on Monday. Some exciting news for you guys, for you and for your teams. One more question for Adam.
Yeah, Adam, this is Lynn in Chicago. Obviously, you've done such an awesome job, and thank you for taking your time out to share a lot of your special sauce with us. What were some of the biggest hurdles that you ran across that you were able to steamroll and make it roll a little bit smoother, faster, more efficient? Can you share some of that with us?
I mean, it's a great question, Lynn. I would say Understanding what a sales model sounds like on the phone and how to pitch to somebody who I've not spoken to before, and how to position myself, and how to really listen to try to find out what the holes in their game was, so that I could show them how I can fill a void with a solution. I used to figuring out how to not just steamroll through every value prop and say, well, why wouldn't you want to do it? It's giving them a couple tastes of like the best information that you have. And then, what I call like just the exploration process. It's almost like an interview, and just trying to get out of as much as possible from them on what they do and how they do it. So I can say, listen, this is a similar experience that I've run into with, XYZ agent. And, we made this small change, and it, there's a great cause and effect to it. So, yeah, that was something that just kind of took a while to get my sea legs from, instead of just telling somebody what I wanted them to do, giving them a reason to listen, and then, helping them understand what I can do to help make their business better, not make my business better.
Great question. Great answer. Adam, real quick, how many calls at your peak per day were you making per day?
At my peak, probably 68 to 70 calls a day.
Every day, 5 days a week.
Yeah, 5 days a week, every day. And
Every
so
day.
I just, cause yeah, every day, like, and you just, you make thousands of calls a year. Our sales team makes 500,000 calls a year, because you have to. And again, like, if you make 70 calls a day, you can expect maybe 8 conversations.
So Adam, just make sure you're clear on terminology. These are recruiting calls.
Yes.
5,000 recruiting calls a year.
500,000 recruiting calls a year, every year. Well, it just continues to grow, but yeah, 500,000 just recruiting calls. There's nothing to do with
500,000 recruiting calls a year.
Yes.
And how many total agents do you guys have right now? Total, just in your team?
As far as like
for your entire unit, just the unit, how many total you have right now?
Yeah, 45,000.
How many?
45,000.
Say it again.
45,000.
I didn't hear you. Can you say that one more time?
Yeah, 45,000.
No, say it again, like you said it the first time.
Yeah, 45,000 folks. And that's not like the tire kicker stuff, because, if you want to talk about the all-in number, there's more. But if you talk about the ones that are effective, 45,000. And
you have 45,000 that are writing business.
Yes.
45,000 that are writing apps.
Yeah, 45,000 that are writing apps. It's crazy.
So that's not counting the ones that are not doing anything. That's the ones that are actually productive. 45,000 productive agents.
Yeah, and to put that in perspective, there's going to be another 20,000 that we've made, relationships with that aren't writing. So if you think of 65,000 contracted agents, and that's the work it takes. So like, not everyone's an A player, even if the pitch is there from their side. So you just got to keep backfilling so that you can keep introducing yourself to more people. And again, as your brand grows, you get a little surprised. Wow, this person does want to talk to me because they've heard more. So yeah, Tony, it's a large number, and it's doable for literally everyone. Like, it's, anybody can do this. It's just, you got to be acute and fine tune your approach and continue to evolve. But anybody on this call can 100% do this.
Wow. Impressive, Adam. Great job. Anyone else have another question? Then we're going to move on.
Tony, I don't have a question, but I've got an assessment. I just, you know me, I take a lot of notes just like you. Adam, one of your points earlier in the presentation was knowing your value proposition. I can't tell you how many times since I've done a lot of recruiting here, just because you know the basics and you expect kind of across the industry that it's sort of standard to have lead support and training and all that stuff. That doesn't mean the person you're talking to on the other end of the phone knows that. They don't know anything about you and your business and your offering. Know your value proposition like the back of your hand, so that if somebody's like, well, what's your training like? Well, you have 13 bullet points about your training. You know everything there is to know about it. But just because you do, it doesn't mean they do. I find that to be super true.
It is so true. And just a week ago, I had a call with just a care provider and a group, in the Midwest. And they're like, oh, you have 150 people. It's like, how do you get those agents into all states if you're all in one office? Like, they had no clue who we were. So again, never take for granted, and never be ashamed of talking about the stuff that you've achieved, because again, like, I'm always going to be interested in somebody who can talk about what they've done and shown me what they've accomplished than somebody who just is really good at just talking in the moment. I mean, be proud of what you've accomplished, and don't think that everybody else, because they're not in your niche industry, knows everything about you. So yeah, explain it as many times as you can, and it just gives you more chance to brand. And it's such a great point, Michael.
Yeah. And then the other part, and I'll be brief because I know we got a lot, Tony. The dedication to outbound calling for recruiting. I'm not talking about sales or setting up appointments or any of that stuff, all the weekly meetings we have. I'm talking about dedicating time to recruiting calls. If you do that even for an hour a day, every day, 5 days a week, treat it like a job, you will be far more successful than you've been recently when you just call when you have time. Because I call when I have time, and I know that doesn't get me anywhere. I've got 20 minutes till the next meeting. Maybe I'll call this guy. Let me look at some info first. Let me get that whole perfection before I pull the trigger type thing. It doesn't, that's not how this works. You need to go by volume. And when you dedicate time, that's the only way you get to do that. Because when you call, when you have time, you'll never have time.
And yeah, listen, everybody has more time in the day than they say. Like, if you really did like a time card for yourself and like, man, I spent 2 hours just digging through Instagram and news and sports or whatever, like, you could at least cut that in half and make some calls. And one thing I don't think I said is your best call times are between like 11 and 12, and then 4 and 5 when people are done at the end of the day, or they're starting to wind down before they take a break. Yeah, you want to try to be, if you're only going to spend an hour a day, I would look at that before lunch or at that end of the day part, so that you can have the most effective hour. If you try to do it at like between 9 and 10, man, that's when everybody's right. They're humming for their day. So think about where you can position that time more effectively.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Great stuff, Adam. Brilliant. I see why you're the best. I do. I mean, this was brilliant. Great stuff. 45,000 agents, the things that you shared today. I know we have some people in this call that are going to take heed to it and make it happen. So again, thank you, Adam. I'm going to let you go, my friend. Awesome. Appreciate everything you've done for our organization. You guys are great.
You all take care. Great to meet everybody. And yeah, we'll talk soon.